Commander Jake Miller was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm went off. The red lights flashed across Research Station Alpha 7, and the computer voice announced an incoming priority message. Jake put down his mug and walked to the communications room. "What do we have, Lisa?" he asked Dr. Lisa Park, who was already at the control panel. "Long-range transmission from the Galactic Council," she said. "They want to talk to us about something called First Contact Protocols." Jake scratched his head. "First Contact? We've been talking to aliens for 6 months now." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms and glowing yellow eyes. The creature wore elaborate robes covered in symbols that seemed to move on their own. "Greetings, humans of Research Station Alpha 7, the alien said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire. We need to discuss your species integration into galactic society." Jake leaned back in his chair. "Sure, Ambassador. What's the problem?" Zethkar's expression grew serious. "The problem is that your species has been classified as an emerging predator species. You must undergo mandatory cultural conditioning before you can interact freely with civilized worlds." "Cultural conditioning?" Lisa asked. "What does that mean?" "It means you must learn proper conduct among advanced civilizations," Zethkar explained. "Your species shows disturbing signs of aggression and unpredictability. We have prepared educational materials about the galaxy's established apex predator species." The screen changed to show a long list of alien names and pictures. Each entry had thousands of years of military history, battle records, and conquest. Achievements. The Corvan Empire had ruled 12 star systems for 8,000 years. The Hive Mind Collective had absorbed entire civilizations through perfect battle coordination. The Ethereal Dominion used psychic warfare to control minds across vast distances. "These are the species that maintain order in our galaxy," Zethkar continued. "Each has earned their position through documented military supremacy spanning millennia. They have rich histories of honorable combat and strategic brilliance." Jake looked at the list, then at Lisa, and back at the screen. "That's a lot of history." "Indeed," Zethkar said proudly. "The Skerix warriors have 3 centuries of undefeated combat records. The Nexus Syndicate has conquered 47 worlds using only economic warfare. The Void Hunters have perfected the art of stealth attacks over 2,000 years. "Impressive," Jake said. "So what do you want us to do?" "You must study these histories and learn proper military etiquette," Zethkar explained. "Your species cannot simply ignore established protocols. There are rules for engagement, codes of honor, and traditional combat methods that must be respected." Jake stood up and walked to a storage cabinet. He pulled out a black marker and a piece of white plastic. Lisa watched as he wrote something in large, clear letters. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Making a sign," Jake said. He finished writing and held it up for Zethkar to see. The sign read, "Warning. Humans inside approach with extreme caution." Zethkar stared at the sign for a long moment. "I do not understand. Is this some form of military declaration?" "Nope," Jake said, walking to the airlock. "It's a warning sign." He attached the sign to the outside of the station's main entrance with magnetic strips. "But where is your military history?" Zethkar asked, sounding confused. "Where are your battle records? Your conquest achievements?" Lisa tried to explain. "We don't really keep extensive military histories, Ambassador. We're usually too busy putting up warning signs about things that might kill us." "Warning signs?" Zethkar's 4 arms moved in what might have been frustration. "You face the galaxy's most dangerous predators with warning signs?" "Well, yeah," Jake said, sitting back down. "On Earth, we learned pretty early that it's easier to warn people about dangerous stuff than to write long stories about how we dealt with it. Give me an example Zethkar demanded. Jake thought for a moment. Okay, take bears. Big, dangerous animals on our planet. We could write epic poems about brave warriors who fought bears, but instead we just put up signs that say danger, bear area, and tell people to stay away. But what if the bear attacks anyway? Zethkar asked. Then we deal with it, Jake said simply. But the sign usually works. Zethkar looked at his notes, then at the humans on the screen. This is highly irregular. Every civilized species has detailed military traditions. The Corvan Empire has a 10,000-year warrior code. The Ethereal Dominion has psychic battle techniques passed down through generations. That sounds like a lot of work, Lisa said. How do they have time to actually fight if they're always studying old battles? They study history to learn from. Past victories and defeats, Zethkar explained. It is how civilized species conduct warfare. Jake shrugged. We just make it up as we go along. Works pretty well for us. Make it up? Zethkar's voice rose an octave. You cannot simply improvise military strategy. Why not? Jake asked. Every situation is different. What worked against one enemy might not work against another. Better to stay flexible and adapt. Zethkar was quiet for a moment, reviewing his notes. Your species has been involved in 7 conflicts since joining the galactic community. You have won all 7 engagements. Yep, Jake said. And we put up warning signs before each one. But you have no formal military doctrine, Zethkar protested. No established command structure, no traditional weapons, no ancient battle techniques. Nope, Jake agreed. Just warning signs and common sense. Lisa leaned forward. Ambassador, can I ask you something? How many of these apex predator species actually read the warning signs before they attack? Zethkar paused. I do not understand the relevance of that question. Well, Lisa continued, if they're so focused on their military traditions and ancient battle techniques, they probably don't pay attention to simple warning signs, right? Warning signs are for lesser species, Zethkar said dismissively. Apex predators do not need to read warnings. Jake and Lisa exchanged a look. Jake stood up and walked to the communications panel. Ambassador, I'm going to make another sign. For our station, he said. This one's going to say, caution. Humans, when cornered, become unpredictable. You might want to share that with your apex predator friends. Zethkar's image flickered as he seemed to lose his composure. This is not how civilized species conduct themselves. You cannot simply post warning signs instead of following proper military protocols. Why not? Jake asked. It's worked for us so far. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Jake and Lisa alone in the communications room. Think he'll be back? Lisa asked. Probably, Jake said, picking up his coffee mug. But I bet he'll read the warning signs first. Captain Ben Torres stepped off the transport ship onto the rocky surface of Xerion Prime. The planet looked like a desert mixed with a jungle, with red sand dunes and thick green forests scattered across the landscape. His survey team followed. Behind him, carrying equipment cases and scanning devices. Okay, people, standard resource survey, Ben announced. We map the minerals, catalog the wildlife, and get home in time for dinner. Sergeant Amy Ross checked her rifle and looked around. This place gives me the creeps, Captain. Too quiet. Quiet is good, said Dr. Pete Johnson, the team's geologist. Means nothing's trying to eat us yet. They set up base camp in a clearing near some tall rock formations. The team worked efficiently, setting up tents, equipment stations, and a communications array. Ben was reviewing the planetary survey data when Amy called out. Captain, you need to see this. Amy was standing at the edge of the clearing, pointing at something carved into a large boulder. Ben walked over and saw symbols etched deep into the stone. The symbols looked fresh, despite being cut into solid rock. What do you think it means? Amy asked. Before Ben could answer, a loud roar echoed across the landscape, and another, and another. The sounds came from different directions, like animals calling to each other. Those don't sound like regular animals, Pete said nervously. Adjusting his equipment, Ben activated his communicator. Command, this is Survey Team 7. We're getting some unusual readings down here. The planet might not be as empty as we thought. The response came through static. Survey 7, be advised. We're picking up multiple large life forms converging on your position. Recommend immediate defensive posture. Defensive posture? Ben looked at his team of scientists and one Marine. Amy, what's our defensive capability? 1 rifle, 3 sidearms, and whatever we can improvise, Amy replied. Not much against whatever's making those sounds. Ben thought for a moment, then walked to his equipment case. He pulled out a roll of yellow plastic tape and a black marker. What are you doing, Captain? Pete asked. Making signs, Ben said simply. He tore off a piece of tape and wrote on it with the marker. Danger. Human activity zone. Lethal traps ahead. Amy stared at him. Sir, I don't think signs are going to help us against whatever's out there. Maybe not, Ben said, sticking the sign to a nearby tree. But they might make whatever's out there think twice. He made several more signs. Caution. Humans at work, stay back 500 meters. Warning. Improvised explosives in use. And danger. Unstable ground. Proceed at your own risk. The team watched as Ben placed the signs around their camp in a rough circle. The roars were getting closer now, and they could hear heavy footsteps moving through the forest. Captain, Amy said quietly, I think we're about to have company. 8 massive creatures emerged from the trees. They looked like dinosaurs crossed with crocodiles, standing upright on 2 legs. Each one was at least 8 feet tall, with thick scales, sharp claws, and teeth that could bite through metal. They wore simple armor and carried weapons that looked like high-tech spears. The largest of the creatures stepped forward and spoke in heavily accented English. I am War Leader Scarix of the Hunting Grounds. You have entered sacred territory without permission. Ben stepped forward, keeping his hands visible. I'm Captain Ben Torres of the Earth Survey Corps. We're just here to map the planet's resources. Earth? Scarix looked confused. The small world that recently joined the galactic community? That's us, Ben said. We didn't know this was your territory. We can leave if you want. Scarix laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Leave? You misunderstand, small human. This is the greatest hunting preserve in the galaxy. Warriors come from across the stars to test their skills here. Hunting preserve? Pete whispered. We're in a hunting preserve. The Scarix have dominated these hunting grounds for 3 centuries, the war leader continued. We have defeated every challenger, conquered every prey species, and claimed victory over the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Amy slowly moved her hand toward her weapon. That's great for you. We'll just pack up and go. No, Scarix said. Firmly. You are here now. You must face the trial of combat. It is the way of the hunting grounds. Ben looked at the signs he had posted around the camp. What if we don't want to fight? All who enter must fight, Scarix declared. It is tradition. It is honor. It is the way of warriors. Okay, Ben said. But we should probably warn you about something first. Warn us? Scarix sounded amused. What could small humans possibly warn the mighty Scarix about? Ben pointed to the nearest sign. Well, we put up some warning signs around our camp. You might want to read them before you attack. Scarix and his warriors looked at the yellow signs with black writing. They seemed puzzled by the simple warnings. What are these supposed to mean? Scarix asked. They're warnings, Ben explained. We humans learned a long time ago that it's easier to warn people about dangerous situations than to clean up the mess afterward. Dangerous situations? Scarix laughed again. You are 4 small humans with primitive weapons. We are 8 Scarix, warriors with 3 centuries of combat experience. What danger could you possibly pose? Amy whispered to Ben. Captain, what's the plan here? Same as always, Ben whispered back. We improvise. Scarix raised his weapon. Prepare for combat, humans. Today you will learn why the Scarix are the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Wait, Ben said, holding up his hand. Just give us a minute to get ready. You have 1 minute, Scarix declared. Then we attack. Ben quickly gathered his team. Amy, remember that rope we used to secure the equipment? Yes, sir. Good. Pete, those chemical markers you use for rock samples? I've got a dozen of them. Pete said, Perfect. And I've got some emergency flares and that portable drill we use for core samples. The team worked quickly while Scarix and his warriors waited. They moved around the camp, staying within the area marked by the warning signs. To the watching aliens, it looked like the humans were just organizing their equipment. Time is up, Scarix announced. Now we hunt. The first Scarix warrior charged forward, ignoring the warning signs completely. He made it 3 steps past the danger sign before stepping into a carefully concealed hole that Amy had dug with the portable. Drill. The warrior fell face first into the pit, which was lined with sharp equipment stakes. Trap, Scarix roared. They set traps. The second warrior was more careful, but he didn't notice the thin rope stretched between 2 trees at ankle height. When he tripped, he fell directly onto a cluster of Pete's chemical markers, which exploded in a cloud of bright purple smoke. The signs warned you, Ben called out. We told you it was dangerous. A third warrior tried to circle around the camp, but stepped on a pressure plate that Ben had rigged with an emergency flare. The flare shot up like a rocket, startling the warrior so badly that he fell backward into another concealed pit. This is not honorable combat, Scarix protested. This is trickery. This is basic safety protocol, Amy replied, watching 2 more warriors get tangled in carefully placed rope snares. We warned you about the traps. Within 10 minutes, 6 of the 8 Scarix warriors were caught in various improvised traps. None of them were seriously injured, but they were all stuck, confused, and covered in colorful chemical markers. Scarix looked at his trapped warriors, then at the humans, then at the warning signs. How did you know we would ignore the warnings? Most people do, Ben said. That's why we learn to make the warnings work, whether people read them or not. But we are the greatest hunters in the galaxy, Scarix insisted. We have defeated every challenger for 3 centuries. Maybe they were all focused on honor and tradition, Amy suggested. Sometimes it's better to just pay attention to the warning signs. Scarix was quiet for a moment, looking at his warriors struggling to free themselves from the simple traps. You defeated us with primitive tools and basic warnings. We didn't defeat you, Ben corrected. We just prepared for the situation. Big difference. And you learned this from your military history? Scarix asked. Ben shook his head. We learned it from camping trips and safety training. Most humans know how to set basic traps and warning systems. Camping trips? Scarix sounded confused. Yeah, Pete said, helping free one of the trapped warriors. We go into the wilderness for fun. You have to know how to protect yourself from dangerous animals. You do this for entertainment? Scarix asked. Sure, Amy said. It's relaxing. Scarix looked around at his warriors, the warning signs, and the simple traps that had defeated the galaxy's most feared hunters. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should learn more about these warning signs. The Galactic Council's emergency session was held on Omega Point, a massive space station that served as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings. Representatives from 12 of the galaxy's most powerful predator species had gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall. each delegation displaying the symbols and banners of their ancient military traditions. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire stood at the central podium, his four arms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the assembled aliens. The hall was filled with creatures of every shape and size, from the insectoid hive mind collective to the energy-based ethereal dominion. Fellow apex predators, Zethkar began, we face an unprecedented crisis. The humans refuse to follow established military protocols. A ripple of concern passed through the audience. General Crix of the Corvan Empire, a massive reptilian creature with battle scars covering his armored hide, stood up from his delegation. The Corvan Empire has maintained order through our 10,000-year warrior code, Crix declared. Every species learns to respect our ancient traditions or faces the consequences. Indeed, agreed Hive Queen Zara, speaking for the collective. Our perfect battle coordination has absorbed 17 civilizations. Each one studied our methods and acknowledged our superiority before integration. The ethereal dominion's representative, a shimmering cloud of purple energy, pulsed with agreement. Our psychic warfare techniques have been refined over millennia. No species can resist our mental influence once they understand our power. Zethkar nodded. Yet the humans ignore all of this. They show no interest in our histories, our battle records, or our conquest achievements. What do they do instead? Asked War Chief Brutus of the Savage Clans, a humanoid creature covered in natural armor plating. They make signs, Zethkar sighed, his voice heavy with frustration. The hall fell silent. Several delegates looked at each other in confusion. Signs? General Crix asked. What kind of signs? Warning signs, Zethkar explained. Simple messages telling others to stay away or be careful. That is not how civilized warfare is conducted, Hive Queen Zara protested. Where are their military? Academies? Their ancient weapons? Their traditional battle formations? They don't have any, Zethkar replied. When I asked about their military history, they said they were too busy putting up warning signs to write long stories about battles. At that moment, the hall's main entrance opened. Colonel Dan Wright walked in, carrying a large duffel bag and looking around at the assembled aliens with casual interest. He was wearing a simple military uniform with no ceremonial decorations or ancient symbols. Sorry I'm late, Dan said, setting down his bag near the entrance. Traffic was terrible. The assembled predators stared at the single human who had just walked into their emergency session. Dan seemed completely unbothered by the dozens of dangerous aliens surrounding him. Colonel Wright, Zethkar said stiffly, we were just discussing your species' unconventional approach to galactic politics. Oh, good, Dan said, opening his duffel bag. I brought some materials that might help explain things. He pulled out a folding table and set it up near the entrance. Then he began removing laminated signs from his bag, each one printed in multiple alien languages. What are you doing? General Crix demanded. Setting up an information booth, Dan replied, arranging the signs on his table. I figured you might want to understand how humans approach dangerous situations. The signs were simple but clear. Humans present do not attempt to intimidate. Caution. Humans when cornered become unpredictable. And warning. Humans have been known to pack bond with dangerous species. This is outrageous, War Chief. Brutus roared. You dare to set up a merchant stall in our sacred assembly hall? It's not a merchant stall, Dan said calmly. It's a safety information booth. Free of charge. Hive Queen Zara's compound eyes focused on the signs. You are treating us like environmental hazards to be managed. Well, yeah, Dan said. You're all apex predators, right? That makes you dangerous. Humans always put up warning signs around. Dangerous things. We are not things, the ethereal dominion's representative pulsed angrily. We are the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Advanced and dangerous. Dan agreed. That's why the warning signs are so important. Zethkar stepped forward. Colonel, the assembled delegates want to know about humanity's military doctrine. Where are your ancient battle techniques? Your traditional weapons? Your historical conquest records? Dan looked around the hall, taking in the banners, symbols, and ceremonial weapons displayed by each delegation. We don't really have those things, he said. Then how do you fight? General Crix asked. How do you maintain order? How do you defend your territory? We adapt, Dan said simply. Every situation is different, so we make it up as we go along. The hall erupted in protests. Dozens of aliens spoke at once, their voices mixing into a chorus of outrage and confusion. You cannot simply improvise military strategy. Zethkar shouted over the noise. Why not? Dan asked. It works for us. Because civilized warfare requires structure, Hive Queen Zara explained. Ancient traditions provide the framework for honorable combat. Honorable combat? Dan looked puzzled. We're not trying to be honorable. We're trying to solve problems. Problems? War Chief Brutus laughed. Warfare is not about solving problems. It is about demonstrating superiority through strength and tradition. That sounds like a lot of extra work, Dan said. We just want to get things done and go home. The ethereal dominion's representative pulsed with confusion. But how do you measure success without proper military records? How do you know if you have achieved victory? If we solve the problem and everybody goes home safe, that's success, Dan replied. We don't need to write epic poems about it. This is impossible, General Crix declared. Every species in the galaxy follows established military protocols. You cannot simply ignore thousands of years of precedent. Dan walked over to his information booth and picked up another sign. This one read, Humans, solving problems since 200,000 BCE. We've been improvising solutions for a long time, he said. It's worked pretty well so far. But what about glory? War Chief Brutus asked. What about the honor of battle? The thrill of conquest? We get our thrills from other things, Dan said, like figuring out how to survive in places that are trying to kill us. Places that are trying to kill you? Zethkar asked. Yeah, our home planet is pretty hostile, Dan explained. Everything there wants to eat us, poison us, or crush us. We learned early on that it's better to put up warning signs and find practical solutions than to fight epic battles against every dangerous animal. So you treat galactic warfare like environmental management? Hive Queen Zara asked. Pretty much, Dan said. You're all dangerous, so we put up warnings and figure out how to work around you. Work around us? General Crix sounded offended. We are apex predators. We are not obstacles to be managed. You're both, Dan said. Dangerous and manageable, if you know what you're doing. The hall fell quiet as the assembled predators considered this. Finally, the ethereal dominion's representative spoke. Your species has been involved in conflicts with several of our member civilizations, the energy being said. You have achieved favorable outcomes in each case. We solved the problems, Dan confirmed. That's what we do. But you have no formal military training, Zethkar protested. No ancient battle techniques, no traditional weapons. Nope, Dan agreed. Just common sense and a lot of practice dealing with dangerous situations. Practice? War Chief Brutus asked. What kind of practice? Dan thought for a moment. Well, most humans know basic first aid, basic self-defense, and how to survive in the wilderness. We learn it in school or from our families, or just from living on Earth. Living on Earth teaches you military strategy? General Crix asked. Living on Earth teaches you how to survive when everything is trying to kill you, Dan replied. Military strategy is just applying those same principles to different situations. And the warning signs? Hive Queen Zara asked. are part of the survival toolkit, Dan explained. If you can warn people about danger, you can prevent a lot of problems before they start. The assembled predators looked at each other, then at Dan, then at the simple warning signs on his information booth. Finally, Sethkar spoke. Colonel Wright, are you suggesting that humanity's approach to galactic politics is based on treating us like dangerous wildlife? Not wildlife, Dan corrected. Dangerous neighbors. There's a difference. What difference? The ethereal Dominion asked. We respect dangerous neighbors, Dan said. We just make sure everyone knows they're dangerous. He picked up his duffel bag and started packing up his signs. Anyway, I should get going. Thanks for the meeting. As Dan walked toward the exit, he paused and pulled out one more sign. He stuck it on the wall next to the door. Caution. Humans in diplomatic talks prepare for unconventional solutions. The hall remained silent as the single human left, leaving behind a room full of the galaxy's most dangerous predators staring at a simple warning sign. The Vorthan battle fleet hung in space like a pack of hungry wolves, their ships arranged in a perfect attack formation around the small convoy of human cargo vessels. Fleet Admiral Christar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the primitive human ships with satisfaction. Attention human vessels, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to halt and prepare for tribute collection. By ancient right of conquest, the Vorthan Empire claims dominion over this trade route. The human convoy consisted of 5 cargo ships and 2 escort vessels. They looked tiny compared to the massive Vorthan warships, each one barely the size of a Vorthan fighter craft. Captain Pete Johnson sat in the command chair of the freighter New Horizons, the convoy's lead ship. He was drinking coffee and reading a supply manifest when the Vorthan transmission came through. Ancient right of conquest? Pete asked his communications officer, Kate Adams. What's that supposed to mean? Kate checked her records. According to the Galactic database, the Vorthan Empire has controlled this sector for about 2,000 years. They have the right to demand tribute from passing ships. Tribute? Pete looked puzzled. Like taxes? More like protection money, Kate replied. Pay them or they attack. Pete considered this for a moment, then activated the ship's external communication system. This is Captain Pete Johnson of the cargo vessel New Horizons. We're just trying to deliver supplies to the mining colony on Kepler 7. We're not looking for trouble. Admiral Christar's voice boomed across the communication channel. Trouble finds those who do not respect the ancient ways human. The Vorthan Empire has dominated this sector since your species was crawling in caves. That's a long time, Pete agreed. But we're still not looking for trouble. Then you will pay tribute, Christar declared. Half your cargo and full navigation. Records, as is traditional. Pete looked at the manifest again. The cargo hold was full of medical supplies, food, and basic equipment for the mining colony. The miners were counting on this delivery. I can't do that, Pete said. These supplies are needed on Kepler 7. People will go hungry without them. That is not our concern, Christar replied. The Vorthan Empire answers to no one. We have conquered dozens of species and claimed victory over the galaxy's most feared warriors. I'm sure you have, Pete said, but I still can't give you the supplies. Kate leaned over to Pete and whispered, Captain, they have 12 warships. We have 2 escort vessels and some cargo haulers. This isn't a fight we can win. Pete nodded and activated the ship's general communication system. This is Captain Johnson to all vessels in the convoy. We have a situation here. Please maintain minimum safe distance of 10 kilometers from our ships. 10 kilometers? Kate asked. Why 10 kilometers? Standard safety protocol, Pete replied. He switched back to the external communication channel. Admiral Christar, this is a human-operated vessel. For your safety, Please maintain minimum distance of 10 kilometers. Kristar's laugh echoed through the communication system. For our safety? You amuse me, human. We are the Vorthan Empire. We do not fear the warnings of cargo haulers. It's not a threat, Pete explained. It's just a safety recommendation. We put up warning signs around dangerous situations. Dangerous situations? Kristar sounded even more amused. You are 7 small cargo ships against 12 battle cruisers. What danger could you possibly pose? Well, Pete said thoughtfully, humans have a tendency to do unpredictable things when they're cornered. We thought you should know. Unpredictable things? Kristar's voice took on a mocking tone. Please, enlighten us with your unpredictable human tactics. Pete looked at Kate, who shrugged. We usually make it up as we go along, Pete said. That's what makes it unpredictable. Enough of this nonsense, Kristar declared. You will surrender your cargo or face the consequences. The Vorthan Empire has never been defeated in battle. That's impressive, Pete said. How long have you been using the same battle tactics? Our military doctrine has been perfected over 2 millennia, Kristar said proudly. We have ancient strategies that have never failed us. Ancient strategies? Pete repeated. So you do the same thing every time? We do what works, Kristar replied. Why change perfection? Pete activated the convoy's emergency communication system. All ships, this is New Horizons. We have a code yellow situation. Repeat, code yellow? Code yellow? Kristar asked. What is code yellow? It means we're about to do something unpredictable, Pete explained. You might want to back off to that 10-kilometer safety zone. I think not, Kristar said. All ships, attack formation. Prepare to disable the human vessels. The Vorthan fleet moved into their traditional battle formation, a complex arrangement that had served them well for centuries. Each ship took its assigned position, creating overlapping fields of fire and defensive coverage. Pete watched the alien ships arrange themselves on his tactical display. Kate, are you recording this? Yes. Sir, Kate replied. Standard procedure. Good, Pete said. Send a message to the escort ships. Tell them to execute Plan Random. Plan Random? Kate asked. What's Plan Random? We make it up as we go along, Pete said. That's the whole point. The human escort ships, Defender and Guardian, were small, compared to the Vorthan warships, but they were fast and maneuverable. Instead of engaging in traditional combat, they began flying in seemingly random patterns around the convoy. What are they doing? Kristar demanded. This is not proper battle formation. They're being unpredictable, Pete replied. We warned you about that. The escort ships suddenly launched a barrage of what looked like standard missiles at the Vorthan fleet. The Vorthan ships easily intercepted the incoming projectiles with their advanced defense systems. Is that the best you can do? Kristar laughed. Our shields can deflect 10 times that firepower. Those weren't attack missiles, Pete said calmly. They were emergency beacon deployers. Suddenly, the space around the Vorthan fleet filled with dozens of small devices, each one broadcasting emergency distress signals on every frequency. The Vorthan communication systems were flooded with automated messages. Mayday, 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 human vessel under attack, requesting immediate assistance. Turn off these signals, Kristar ordered his communications officer. I cannot, Admiral. The officer replied. They are using frequencies we cannot jam without disabling our own systems. What is the purpose of this? Kristar demanded. Emergency protocol, Pete explained. When humans are in danger, we call for help. It's automatic. Within minutes, 3 human patrol ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were smaller than the Vorthan warships, but moved with surprising speed and coordination. This is Commander Sarah Blake of the patrol ship Vigilant. came a new voice over the communication channel. "We received multiple distress calls. What's the situation?" "We have a tribute collection in progress," Kristar announced. "This is Vorthan territory. You have no authority here." "Actually," Commander Blake replied, "the distress calls came from human vessels, which makes this our jurisdiction. Please, explain why you're threatening civilian cargo ships." "We are not threatening," Kristar protested. "We are exercising ancient rights of conquest." "Ancient rights don't apply to human vessels," Blake said. "We don't recognize conquest-based taxation." "You cannot simply ignore established galactic law," Kristar argued. "We're not ignoring it," Blake replied. "We're interpreting it differently." Pete watched as the 3 patrol ships took up positions around the convoy. They were still outnumbered 4-1, but something had changed in the tactical situation. "Admiral," one of the Vorthan officers reported, "the human patrol ships are using some kind of jamming technology. Our targeting systems are having difficulty locking onto them." "Impossible," Kristar said. "Our technology is superior to theirs." "It's not superior technology," Commander Blake explained over the open channel. "It's improvised electronic countermeasures. We made them from spare parts." "Made them from spare parts?" Kristar sounded incredulous. "Human engineering philosophy," Blake said. "If it's broken, fix it. If it's not broken, improve it. If you can't improve it, modify it to do something completely different." The human ships suddenly scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that seemed to make no sense. The Vorthan fleet tried to maintain their traditional formation while tracking multiple fast-moving targets. "This is chaos," Kristar muttered. "Where is their battle discipline? Their tactical coordination?" "We are coordinated," Pete said. "We're just not coordinated the way you expect." The cargo ships began launching more devices, not weapons, but what looked like garbage. Empty food containers, worn-out equipment parts, and discarded packaging materials filled the space around the Vorthan fleet. "What is this supposed to accomplish?" Kristar asked. "Debris field," Kate explained. "Makes it harder for large ships to maneuver safely." "You are littering," Kristar accused. "We're improvising," Pete corrected. "There's a difference." The patrol ships suddenly regrouped and launched a coordinated attack on the Vorthan flagship. But instead of using conventional weapons, they fired cables that attached to the larger ship's hull. "What are you doing?" Kristar demanded as his ship was pulled off course. "Towing," Commander Blake replied. "Standard human rescue procedure." "Rescue procedure?" Kristar was confused. "When a ship is in The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in the organization's history. Representatives from every major civilization had come to hear the final discussion about the human problem. The Great Assembly Hall on Omega Point was packed with delegates, military leaders, and diplomatic observers. The 12 apex predator species sat in the front rows, their elaborate banners and ancient symbols creating a display of military tradition that spanned thousands of years. Behind them sat dozens of smaller civilizations, all waiting to hear how the galaxy's established order would deal with humanity's unconventional approach to interstellar relations. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the central podium, his 4 arms spread wide as he addressed the assembly. "Fellow beings of the galaxy, we face a crisis that threatens the very foundation of civilized warfare." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. General Crix of the Corvan Empire nodded his massive, scarred head. "The humans show no respect for established military doctrine. They ignore our ancient traditions and refuse to follow proper combat protocols. They defeated my hunting grounds with warning signs and improvised traps," War Leader Scarix added, his voice heavy with shame. 3 centuries of Scarix dominance ended because we did not read their simple warnings. Hive Queen Zara spoke for the collective. Our perfect battle coordination was useless against their random tactics. They had no formation, no strategy, no predictable patterns. My fleet was scattered by cargo ships and patrol vessels, Fleet Admiral Christar admitted. 2,000 years of Vorthan military superiority, defeated by what they called logistics. Solutions. The assembly hall buzzed with concern as more military leaders shared similar stories. Each one described encounters with humans that ended in confusion, frustration, and unexpected outcomes. How is this possible? Asked Supreme Commander Vex of the Shadow Syndicate. We have studied warfare for millennia. We have perfected our battle techniques through countless conflicts. That is exactly the problem, said a familiar voice from the back of the hall. All heads turned to see Human Ambassador Steve Clark walking down the central aisle. He carried a simple briefcase and wore a plain diplomatic uniform with no ceremonial decorations. The assembled aliens watched as he made his way to the front of the hall. Ambassador Clark, Sethkar said stiffly, you were not scheduled to speak. No, Steve said, setting his briefcase on a nearby table. But I think I can help explain what's been happening. Please, General Crix said sarcastically, enlighten us with your superior human wisdom. Steve opened his briefcase and began removing items. Instead of military manuals or tactical guides, he pulled out simple signs, warning labels, and safety notices. Each one was made of basic materials, plastic, metal, or paper, with clear, simple text. These represent humanity's complete military philosophy, Steve announced, spreading the signs across the table. The assembled delegates stared at the collection of warning signs. They read, danger, thin ice, caution, falling rocks, warning, wild animals, slippery when wet, high voltage, and dozens of others. Warning signs? Hive Queen Zara asked. This is your military doctrine? This is our survival doctrine, Steve corrected. Military strategy is just part of it. I do not understand, Admiral Christar said. How do warning signs relate to warfare? Steve picked up a sign that read, danger, unstable ground, and held it up for everyone to see. This sign exists because somewhere, sometime, a human stepped on unstable ground and fell. Maybe they got hurt. Maybe they didn't, but they learned something important. What did they learn? War Leader Scarix asked. They learned that ground isn't always stable, Steve explained. So they put up a sign to warn other people. But what does this have to do with military strategy? Supreme Commander Vex demanded. Steve set down the sign and looked around the assembly hall. Every one of these signs represents a lesson learned the hard way. Humans have been dealing with dangerous situations for millions of years, and we've gotten pretty good at it. Dangerous situations? Zethkar asked. Our planet tried to kill us every single day, Steve said simply. Everything on Earth was bigger, stronger, faster, or more poisonous than we were. We survived by being adaptable, creative, and really good at recognizing danger. So you developed these warning systems, General Crix said slowly. We developed a whole philosophy around managing risk, Steve corrected. See, while you were all perfecting your military traditions, we were busy figuring out how to survive in environments that considered us lunch. The hall was completely silent now. Steve picked up another sign. Warning, bears in area. Take bears, for example, Steve continued. Massive predators, incredibly dangerous. We could have developed elaborate warrior codes about fighting bears, written epic poems about bear-slaying heroes, created ancient traditions around bear combat. But you did not, War Leader Scarix observed. No, Steve said. We put up a sign that says danger bears and told people to stay away. Much more efficient. But what if the bear attacks anyway? Admiral Christar asked. Then we deal with it, Steve said. But we deal with it as a practical problem, not as an opportunity for glory. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been observing from the human delegation, stood up. "May I add something, Ambassador?" Steve nodded. Lisa walked to the front and picked up a sign that read, "Caution, wet floor." "This sign exists because someone slipped on a wet floor," she explained. "It's such a simple thing, but it prevents accidents. We learned that it's better to prevent problems than to deal with the consequences." "So your approach to warfare is accident prevention?" Hive Queen Zara asked. "Our approach to everything is risk management," Lisa said. "Warfare is just another risk to be managed." "But where is the honor?" War Chief Brutus demanded. "Where is the glory of battle? The thrill of conquest? We get our thrills from other things," Steve said, "like figuring out how to survive in hostile environments, solving complex problems, and exploring dangerous places." "Dangerous places?" Supreme Commander Vex asked. "Space exploration, deep ocean research, mountain climbing, cave diving," Lisa listed. "Humans do dangerous things for fun." "For fun?" Several aliens spoke at once, their voices mixing in confusion. "Yeah," Steve said. "We go to places that might kill us because we enjoy the challenge of surviving there." Colonel Dan Wright stood up from the human delegation. "If I may, Ambassador, I think there's something else they should understand." Steve gestured for Dan to continue. Dan walked to the front and picked up a sign that read, "Danger, Construction Zone." "This sign warns about construction work," Dan said. "But the interesting thing is that humans put up this sign even when the construction is beneficial. We're building something good, but we still warn people about the danger." "I do not see the relevance," General Crick said. "The relevance is that we treat everything as potentially dangerous," Dan explained. "Even ourselves. Especially ourselves." "What do you mean?" Sethkar asked. Don reached into his pocket and pulled out another sign. "Caution. Humans when cornered become unpredictable." "We know we're dangerous," Dan said, "so we warn people about it." The assembly hall erupted in confused chatter. The alien delegates turned to each other, trying to understand what the humans were saying. "You warn others about your own species?" Admiral Christar asked. "Of course," Steve said. "We're one of the most dangerous things on our planet. We should come with warning labels." "But why?" Hive Queen Zara asked. "Why warn your enemies about your capabilities?" "Because they're not our enemies," Lisa explained. "They're just other beings trying to survive in a dangerous universe, same as us." "But we are apex predators," War Leader Scarix protested. "We are your natural opponents." "You're our neighbors," Steve corrected. "Dangerous neighbors, but still neighbors. And good neighbors warn each other about hazards." Don added. The hall fell silent as the assembled aliens processed this information. Finally, Supreme Commander Vex spoke. "Are you saying that you treat galactic warfare as a neighborhood safety issue?" "Pretty much," Steve confirmed. "Dangerous situation, practical solution, warning signs for everyone's safety." "But what about military supremacy?" General Crix asked. "What about conquest and domination? What about them?" Steve asked. "We just want to deliver supplies, explore new places, and occasionally mine some asteroids." "Why would we want to conquer anybody?" "Because that is what powerful species do," Sethkar said. "It is the natural order." "Maybe for you," Steve said. "But we've got better things to do." The Ethereal Dominion's representative pulsed with confusion. "What could be better than demonstrating your superiority through conquest?" "Figuring out how to survive on planets with 3 suns," Lisa suggested. "Building space habitats in asteroid fields. Teaching dolphins to use computers." "Teaching dolphins to use computers?" Several aliens asked at once. "Long story," Steve said. "The point is, we're busy. We don't have time for elaborate military traditions." "So you improvise," War Chief Brutus said slowly. We adapt, Steve corrected. Every situation is different, so we use whatever works. And you warn people about the dangers, Admiral Christar added. Always, Dan confirmed. It's just good manners. Ambassador. Zethkar looked at the collection of warning signs spread across the table, then at the human delegation, then at the confused faces of the galaxy's most pow.